She arrived before the light. Before the deckhands, before the fuel trucks. Before the base even began to hum. She walked the same path each morning, from the back lot behind the maintenance hangars, through the outer fence gate, down the concrete spine that bordered the launch strip. She didn't carry a badge. Didn't scan in. The guards didn't stop her anymore. At some point, they had stopped asking. She carried a folding chair under one arm, an old notepad under the other. Her jacket was always zipped to the collar. Not military issue, but close. Dark blue, the cuffs threadbare, collar faded like denim exposed to too many sunrises. She wore a hat low over her face. Aviators. No makeup. No name. She never spoke. Not unless spoken to. And even then, rarely. She set the chair just outside the red line. Not a toe over. Close enough to feel the engine rumble, but never close enough to interfere. She unfolded it with the ease of ritual, sat down, crossed her ankles, opened the notepad, waited, and watched. Carr noticed her on his 7th day at the base. It was early April. Spring winds made the deck unpredictable, and the pre-flight brief had run long. He cut across the rear corridor behind Hangar 4, still memorizing where everything was, when he spotted her in the distance. At first, he thought she was maintenance, civilian, maybe logistics. But something felt wrong. Or rather, too exact. The way she sat, still, upright, head slightly tilted forward like she was listening to something only she could hear. She didn't shift. Didn't reach for her phone. Didn't make eye contact with anyone walking by. Just watched the tarmac. Carr slowed. He told himself it was curiosity. But it was more than that. There was tension in her stillness. Not stiffness, but presence. Like she wasn't just sitting. She was waiting. Or remembering. By midweek, he saw her again. Same spot. Same posture. Same jacket, zipped to the same line across her throat. And this time, he noticed something new. The way her fingers gripped the notepad just before a launch. Not hard. Not nervous. But deliberate. A pilot's grip. Or maybe a technician's. The kind of hand that had once been trained not to tremble. He didn't speak to her. Not yet. But he glanced back as he walked past. Just once. And she turned her head, barely, and met his eyes through the lenses of her aviators. The look wasn't threatening. It wasn't even cold. But it saw him. All the way through. It started with a checklist. Not the formal kind. Not the laminated one clipped to every cockpit door or tucked into the crew chief's hip pouch. This one was hers. Carr saw it 2 mornings later. She was already seated when he passed, back straight against the folding chair, as always. But this time, her notepad lay open across her knees, a pen in her right hand. Her left hand, bare, hovered above the page like she was marking something invisible in the air. The wind moved hard that morning, carrying sand from the West Range. It scraped past the tarmac in long, whispering waves. Most of the crew had goggles on. She didn't flinch. Didn't wipe her face. Just kept watching. Carr stopped 30 feet away, pretending to check his laces. He caught a glimpse of the page. It wasn't just notes. It was angles, a crude diagram of the runway. Numbers. Wind vectors. Wing roll margin. Something that looked like stress arc notation, the kind only used by weapons officers or avionics specialists. But it wasn't the markings that got to him. It was her handwriting. Tight. Clean. Like it had been drilled into her under pressure. Like it used to matter if every stroke was right. Later that day, Carr's squadron prepped for a standard 2-bird launch. Nothing special, just airspace conditioning and turn radius drills. But when Carr crossed into pre-flight, one of the deck crew called over a tech. "Hydraulics read soft," the tech muttered. "Nothing on the board, but she's leaning." Carr leaned in. The starboard flap on 204 had a subtle sag, barely a fraction of an inch offline. Within protocol. Nothing that would flag the system. But she'd noticed it. Carr knew. He looked up toward the edge of the line. There she was, standing now. One arm across her chest, the other hand on her chin. Watching the bird, not the crew. Watching the wing, not the numbers. The crew chief followed Carr's gaze. "What's her deal?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Carr didn't answer. Because the answer wasn't obvious, and it wasn't his to give. They delayed the launch. Replaced a minor hydraulic fitting. The kind that would have failed after takeoff, not a flameout, not catastrophic, but enough to knock out lateral control at full G. Carr didn't tell anyone. But when he passed her later that afternoon, on his way to the hangar, he slowed his step. She didn't look at him. but she spoke, quiet, even. Good eye. Carr blinked. You saw it before I did. Her hand moved slightly. Not a wave, not a gesture. Just a tap of her pen on the edge of the notepad. They always forget the wing roots on windy days. Crossdrift throws them. Carr paused, then asked, You used to fly? She didn't smile, didn't nod, but her voice dropped lower, like a line half said to herself. I used to stop people from taking off when they shouldn't. Then she turned the page in her notebook, and said nothing else. His call sign was Blazer. Perfect posture, glossy gear. The kind of pilot who polished his boots even when no one looked. Carr knew the type. Most rookies tried to earn their silence. Blazer filled his with sound. He strutted across the tarmac like he was already in the mission debrief, like the sky owed him clearance. And then, one morning, he noticed her. She was sitting in her usual spot, jacket zipped, notepad open, shaded lenses fixed on a pair of F-18s being pulled into position for dawn prep. He stopped, tilted his head, then grinned. Oh, come on, he said, loud enough for two techs to hear. She again? One of the deckhands looked away. The other just kept walking. Blazer didn't. He took 3 slow steps toward her. You here to supervise? He said. She didn't move. He waited. Ma'am, he added with mock respect. Just checking. Are you with base command, or are you collecting flight data for your Facebook page? She raised her eyes slightly. Not the whole head. Just enough to meet his reflection in her lenses. Nothing else. That silence. It made him laugh. Awkwardly. Okay then, he muttered. Guess everyone gets a hobby. Carr heard about it a few hours later. They were running maintenance checks when one of the deck crew muttered. Blazer gave her grief this morning. Carr's hand paused on the panel. He didn't say anything. But the rest of the day, he couldn't stop replaying the image in his head, her stillness, his noise, the imbalance. The next morning, he waited near the hangar just to see if she showed. She did, but later than usual, and not with her usual stillness. She unfolded the chair slower, sat down with more weight in her shoulders. The notepad stayed closed for a full 20 minutes. Carr walked by. She didn't look up, but he stopped anyway. You okay? She said nothing. Then, finally, they always think silence is weakness. Carr nodded slowly. They don't know what it costs. Her fingers gripped the edge of the notepad. No. She lifted the cover. They just don't want to hear what it says. That night, Carr found himself back at the archive office, a place no one visited unless they were lost or chasing ghosts. He pulled a file. Old squadron logs, SEAL team, carrier launches, F-18 rotation cycles. Then he found it. A flight manifest from 23 years ago. Call sign Raven. Pilot, Venshaw RA. Status, medical discharge. Unlisted recovery. Final sortie. Launch aborted, returned solo. Co-pilot unrecovered. No incident report. No citation. Just a final notation at the bottom, written in red ink. Engine misfire. She tried to handle it. It happened on a Tuesday. Wind high. Visibility clear. No warnings from tower. Hornet 212 was queued for a standard lift. Nothing risky. Just a full-throttle climb and hard bank return across the eastern perimeter. Routine. Forgettable. Until it wasn't. Carr was watching from the west end when the first alarm hit. 212, abort launch. Engine 2 reading drop. Repeat, drop on pressure. The radio spat static. Then silence. The nose was already rolling. The wheels had begun their tremble. From a distance, it looked clean. But Carr could see the twitch, the way the right flap dipped just slightly too early. The nose correction came too late. The pilot throttled down. Engines whined. The bird stuttered. Then stopped. Hard. Steam hissed off the deck. Everyone froze. The chief ran diagnostics. Avionics read green, he muttered. But pressure's inconsistent. It's showing clean now, but it wasn't. Carr stepped closer. That's the same jet she flagged last week. The chief blinked. What? Carr pointed toward the wing route. She told me they always forget tension shifts on windy mornings. The chief hesitated, then called over 2 more techs. They opened the panel. 5 minutes passed. Then someone swore under their breath. Small fracture in the coupling line, the tech said. Would have held another 20 seconds, maybe. Carr said nothing. He just turned his head toward the corner of the line. Empty. No chair. No notepad. No jacket. That night, Carr couldn't sleep. He walked the edge of the airstrip long after lights out. The wind had dropped to a low crawl. The concrete shimmered faintly under the floodlights. At the far end of the maintenance lot, beside a storage unit, he found it. Her chair, folded, leaning gently against the wall. And next to it, the notebook, closed. He picked it up. The pages were heavier than he expected. Weathered. Used. On the inside cover was a single line, in small, unshaken print. He launched before I could stop it. I don't let that happen twice. In the mess hall, hours later, Carr showed the page to Weller. The commander didn't speak, just ran his thumb along the paper. I remember her, he said finally. Raven. Venshaw. Flew solo out of Diego. Lost her backseater on a rollout. Malfunction. She tried to call it back. Tower cleared too slow. Carr looked up. Why didn't she come back as an officer? Weller's jaw worked. She did. He handed back the notebook. They just stopped listening. The chair reappeared before sunrise. Same place. Same line. Same silence. She unfolded it like she always had, slowly, deliberately, settling into the space with that familiar steadiness that never asked to be noticed. But this time, she didn't sit right away. She stood beside it, watching. The notepad remained closed in her hand, thumb marking the page. Her jacket was zipped to the collar. The air was cool, but her stance wasn't about weather. It was about readiness. Carr saw her from the far side of the deck and stopped mid-stride. A small breath left him, almost involuntarily. She was back. The crew noticed too, one by one. But they didn't say anything. Not like before. They moved a little quieter, looked a little longer. Blazer arrived late. He cut across the line with usual swagger, helmet under one arm, chewing gum like it was part of the uniform. But when he saw her, standing now, not sitting, he slowed. Just a beat. Then kept walking. His bird was ready. 221, fresh rotation. Wind calm. But he hesitated at the ladder. Glanced over at Carr. Pressure readings clean? Carr nodded. Triple checked. Blazer still didn't move. Then he looked at her. She didn't flinch. Didn't nod. Just met his gaze, quiet, unblinking. Blazer turned back toward his plane. And then, into his radio. Tower, this is 221. Holding launch. Awaiting secondary confirmation. Silence. Then, say again, 221? Not rolling without ground visual. I want eyes from Raven. Carr felt the air tighten. Someone exhaled too loudly nearby. The commander stepped out from the ops shack. He didn't say a word. Just looked across the tarmac at her. She moved forward. Not fast, just sure. She stopped 5 feet from the edge of the red line. Stared at the jet. Watched its angle, its wheels, the slight wind pressing under the fuselage. Then she raised her hand. One gesture. A small tilt of her fingers. Not a salute. Not an order. A confirmation. Blazer launched clean. No flutter. No stall. No second guesses. Just power. Carr stood still until the sound faded into blue. Then walked toward her. She had already stepped back to her chair. He reached her as she folded it. You know, he said. They're going to ask what rank you need to be to override protocol like that. She didn't smile. But her voice had that trace of dryness, like someone folding a memory in half. They won't find it in the manual. Carr tilted his head. Why not? She held up the notepad. Because this one wasn't written with ink. She tapped her chest. Once. Some pages get engraved. The next morning, she wasn't alone. Commander Weller arrived before the first checklist call. No booth stomping, no command voice. Just a quiet walk down the launch strip. No clipboard, no staff. He carried something small in one hand. Carr watched him approach her from a distance. It wasn't the usual chain of command exchange. It was something older. When Weller reached her, she stood. No salute, no formality. They faced each other. Just two people who had heard the same sounds, engines screaming, radios cutting out, someone's name repeating through static. Carr couldn't hear what was said, but he saw Weller extend his hand. In his palm, a patch. Worn, faded, frayed along the edges. Raven, LCDRR, A. Venshaw. Her fingers didn't move. At first, then slowly, like she didn't fully believe it, she reached forward and closed her hand around it. Weller spoke, just loud enough for Carr to catch. You shouldn't have had to sit out here to be seen. She looked down at the patch. A breath caught in her throat, but never left her lips. Weller nodded toward the hangar. I pulled your final logbook. There was a note in the back, from him. She didn't lift her eyes. He said she saw it before I did. She always did. Carr stepped closer now, drawn by the stillness between them. Weller turned slightly toward him. Carr, he said quietly, you asked me why she didn't come back as an officer. Carr nodded. Weller's voice dropped. She never left. We just stopped listening. He looked at her again. Until now. Later that day, she stood alone beside the launch rails, watching the wind move down the tarmac like memory. Carr approached, slower than usual. He noticed the patch was sewn back onto the inside of her jacket cuff, where no one would see it, but where she could feel it. He hesitated, then said, Why did you come back? She didn't answer at first. Then, I never left the chair. Carr frowned slightly. She glanced sideways. I just stopped bringing it. She didn't come the next day. Carr noticed before the first jet even spun up. The space beside the red line looked wrong. Not just empty, off balance, like a breath had been held too long. No chair. No notebook. No movement. He scanned the flight line twice, slow. Nothing. But when he turned toward the hangars, he stopped. Someone was standing there. Not her. Lieutenant Avery Cho, the rookie, fresh out of flight school, still wore her helmet strapped too tight, and her checklist tabs and plastic sleeves, but she stood with her hands behind her back, eyes trained on the deck, watching the launch path. Carr walked over. You're early. Cho nodded. Wanted to get eyes on procedures before my slot. He followed her gaze. She wasn't watching the birds. She was watching the hands, the movements, the lag time between calls. He tilted his head. You always this observant? She hesitated. Then, quietly, she told me to be. Carr blinked. When? She handed me a page before she left yesterday. Said you won't understand it yet. Just carry it until you do. Cho reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. Carr opened it. Same clean handwriting. 3 lines. If you forget the wing, you forget the weight. If you forget the pause, you forget the person. And if you ever fly without looking back, don't. At the bottom, R. Carr folded the paper gently, handed it back. Then he stepped away, and let Cho keep watching the runway. The chair never came back. Weeks passed. Launches continued. Pilots rotated. Deck crews changed. Weather shifted. But her corner stayed untouched. Some days, a few crew members slowed as they passed it. A glance. A pause. Nothing said. Carr never moved the chair from storage. He left it folded, right where she had leaned it. Cho stood at the edge now. Not every day. Not in the same way. But often enough that the others noticed. She didn't take notes. Didn't speak much. But she watched. She had started to see the same things. Tension in the wings. Stall in the wind. The kind of sight that isn't taught, only passed. One morning, Carr found a sealed envelope on his locker. No name on the front. Just a single word. Keep. Inside, a checklist. Flight line procedures. Visual cues. Corrections, margins, folds, timings. But at the bottom, written in faded pen, she wasn't trying to stop the launch. She was trying to stop the silence after. Carr folded the paper slow, pressed it flat, then tucked it into his own notepad. The runway carried on. Jets lifted. Radios cracked. Engines roared. But every now and then, someone would hesitate, just for a breath, and glance toward the edge of the red line, and then launch. Because she never needed to be seen. She just needed to be remembered. Some carry rank, others carry radios. She carried the pause, and the ones who understood still do.